Yo,
How's it going, Keith?
good. Very good, Thomas.
Another day, another solar system
Another
to
solar
talk
system.
about.
Yeah, right.
We were talking about something, but I said, let's wait.
Well, you were having some you were expressing some preoccupation
Oh, right.
with your business
Uh huh.
situation,
Yep.
and I was going to mention to you about the. It's like you've got a big decision. It's on your mind, and you didn't know if you could concentrate on this talk.
Mm-hmm.
And my suggestion to you is that if you know anything about the Enneagram has a lot to do with what they call octaves and how you complete an octave. And the idea is that within an octave, there are two places where you wait for outside influences to come in, and you can't fabricate those breaks yourself. You have to rely on an outside source to provide them for you. And most people try to figure it out
Mm.
without recognizing the fact that they're looking for something outside of themselves to come in and provide the next step, which will allow them to get past that break.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess I'm saying that maybe this conversation that we're having might provide that break for you, the information that you need to take your approach or understanding of how to proceed with your business to the
Mm.
next step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like yesterday, I had a lot swirling around in my mind, and I just knew I needed to go for a walk at the river. And as soon as I got to the river, suddenly things became more clear in a different way, like whole new different perspective of how to think about it happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and So I hope already. I mean, it's just nice to be being bringing my attention to a different direction and getting out of the swirl of more thinking about the thing that I keep thinking about. So
Right. Thinking is often not the solution. It's like
yeah.
the solution is there. You just need to stop thinking
Mm-hmm.
in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of thinking, um, now I mean you mentioned the Enneagram, and I know that the Enneagram is super relevant to the origin of monad. And
Yeah.
we were talking about earlier today. You were talking about your book In the Garden, and you were wondering like about some of the stuff that's in that book, like the origin of it, or even just the relevance of it, maybe. Or I don't think you were talking about relevance, but just wondering about where that came from. Is that accurate? All right. Yeah.
Yeah. In the Garden is it's a very strange book, and
Mm.
it is based on the Enneagram, and it also tries to integrate the four elements with the Enneagram, and the first three chapters of Genesis. An Enneagram is a whole, and they talked about that. Gurdjieff talks about how you want to be able to see it in motion, and somehow I had this idea that maybe the writers of the Genesis, whoever that was, that they might have intuitively or maybe even knowingly understood exactly what the Enneagram was, and they coded the description of the process of creation to reflect the structure of the Enneagram. Now, I can't prove that, of course, but that was my premise where I started to write and just see what happens, what falls out of that. And so I thought of the earth as the first day as the creation of light, which to me was the element fire, and that there's a polarity that's created there. It's like light, at the end of the day, there's creation of light and dark. So it's like the element fire has a polarity across it of light and dark. And then the second day would be the creation of water. And the firmament, it talks about a firmament. So to me, that was the plane of the creation of fire. Then separates water into two chambers. So you have the beginning of what I call the cross of creation. And then on the third day, the impulse of creation is divided into two. And I then imagine that that was the creation of awareness. Awareness is the awareness of another, whereas those first 2 days are very much a oneness to the creation. But then all of a sudden you have the creation of two creator points. One is aware of the other. It's like the light is aware of the darkness, the above is aware of below, and you have the awareness is what I believe to be the first element of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think that structure, that they describe in the first two days of creation, is the creation of a standing wave, an electromagnetic waveform, basically, out of which everything arises. It's like the field then gives rise to particles within the field. It's like manifestation arises out of that.
What you're talking about too reminds me of the yin yang, where you could imagine, like, if it was just like the two outer light and dark, like there could be light and darkness, but it's the awareness of other is almost like those little dots inside that have the opposite. So like the ability to recognize the other, in a sense, is only possible when the other is in the self, because there's this idea like it's, spirit recognizes spirit, and so in a sense it's like the awareness of the other is because the little dots inside that are the opposite of the surrounding enable the recognition of self and other and the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly true. Yeah. So somehow within that, I imagine that there was the creation of the vortex energy, where it's like you've got the two sides, but they're unbalanced. So it's like this would be the primordial breaking of symmetry, which I think is a really essential step. It's like symmetry is, you see it everywhere. It's like a face and everything, but it's never exact symmetry. You have to have a breaking of symmetry so that it's 51-49 or something approaching, but not exactly equal to perfect symmetry. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the breaking of symmetry to me was, you've got fire and water, but there's active and passive fire and active and passive water forming a cross, so that you've got active fire and active water in one quadrant, passive water and passive fire in the opposing quadrant. And then in the other ones, you've got active and passive, passive and active. Mm-hmm. So that then allows for this vortex energy to develop. Mm-hmm. And, it's a lot, in my book, I have diagrams, which are a lot more approachable than, words. It's kind of hard to get across all the imagery associated with this. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I got, I'm convinced that this model, that it's a useful model for cosmological principles, because it's like on the third day, those vortexes, I believe, create space in a certain sense, and they also create what I would consider channels within the space of the flow of the current that's generated there. I think that those channeled currents are what eventually turn out to be, I call them primitive plants. And in the Bible, in the third day of creation, is when, strangely enough, plants are created before the sun and the moon are created on the fourth day.
Oh, interesting.
Which doesn't make any sense logically. Uh-huh. but it does make sense
Now,
if
what do you
you.
mean plants were created?
That's what it says. I'll read you.
Read it. Yeah, I'm
Read
curious what the actual words are. It's so unusual. I've never heard it phrased like that, you know?
So let's the first day, let there be light, and God saw that the light was good, separated the light from the dark. The two poles of that's the fire element there. God called the light day and the darkness night. And there was evening and there was morning the first day. And this is before there's an earth, there's a sun and a moon. So usually we think of the earth rotating relative to the sun as night and day. So that's why I think that this is referring to an elemental form instead of an actual
Or
literal.
maybe even like electrical, or like in the spin, anti-spin, electron, positive, negative, proton, positive, electron, negative, or
Something fundamental,
like
yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
And then the second day is, that was the first day. And God said, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. That's the second day. And then here's the third day. And God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And I think that what's happening there is that as you have the original impulse of creation going out as a flat plane, and then it returns perpendicular to that because it can't come back in the same plane because that's already being occupied with the first impulse of creation. So the second impulse of creation bounces back at right angles to that, forming the cross of creation.
which is interesting in electromagnetics.
It's a
because you
description
have
of electromagnetism.
the 90-degree polarity or a rotation between the electrical and magnetic field.
Exactly.
And magnetic field is often called curl, or has some kind of like electrical seems to have more of an outgoing force, and the magnetic curl or spin has more of a like returning or inward. It's almost like the torsion element to
Yep.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's returning from the second day. It returns back towards the original impulse of creation, which is still going on. So it can't bounce back to that point because that point is still emanating the original creative impulse. So it's now got a firmament. It's got this fourfold structure. So what I believe is that the active and the passive form vortexes.
Right, a torsion field.
A torsion field within them. And so
torus.
You also have the creation of the third day is actually the creation of the third dimension of space. So 2 dimensions is a plane. 3 dimensions opens it up into a container, basically, of some sort. So that to me is where it says here, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. So at that point, you have a cavitation that occurs around the original source of creation, and it cavitates in it. So there's like a spectrum of light to heavy elements as it's cavitating towards the opposite pole, which then becomes the earth. So the earth then emerges out of the waters where the cavitation is pressing down and creating like a reverse gravitational effect, creating the earth manifesting out of the waters, where above there's the space.
Yeah.
And
I'm also, my mind is going to this idea of gravity being a push.
Exactly.
Like if there's this quote unquote positive pressure of electromagnetic waves going in all directions, the 0 point energy is this idea of just like waves, particles, waves, but I think of it more as just particles, just like ripples of force moving in all directions. Then as if there is like a degree of accumulation of densification, that's going to then have a shadow in the direction of other coagulations of particles, and because they're in each other's shadow of this 360-degree pressure wave in all directions, it's going to cause things to coagulate and combine together.
Yep. Yeah, gravity as a push is a perfect example of what this would be like. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called sea. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants, and God said, and there was evening and there was morning the third day. So all that is happening on the third day.
Interesting.
So I think that, it's a poetic description, but I think that it's like there's the original impulse of creation is continuing. It goes, it forms fire. It rebounds with this curl effect backwards, and then it's divided into two, and that forms a cavitation, a dual cavitation on either side of the firmament, collapsing back. And you've still got the original circuit, basically, and that circuit is a channel for a current of an electromagnetic current, which is basically that's what I think is the channels through the water, which then also it channels through the earth. So it's passing through all four elements on either side of this thing. The illustration would be useful at this point because it shows. I've got it on my phone, but anyway, that's very strange that you have the creation of the earth, the water, and the plants before the sun and the moon. Here's the fourth day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years." And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the sun, the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. So that's the fourth day. Then the fifth day, you have the creation of the water and air elements, the birds and the fish. And the sixth day, you have the creation of the animals and man. So
Wow.
a very interesting story. And I think that all of it is built around these triangles of creation. It's like you have, in other words, 6 triangles, but they're all, each triangle adds a new layer of complexity to this whole thing, so that by the end, you've built up this incredible complexity within this original sphere of creation. So
Cool.
yeah. So yeah, that I'm still trying to work all this out, and I can see it in my head, and now it's just a matter of supplying the right description, and anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's the connection from there to monad?
All right, exactly, yeah. So by the time you finish this, you've got the sun and the moon are located on they're at the air. It's like if you look at the Enneagram is a 9-sided, it's a circle with 9 points with a triangle. And then there's a weird 6-sided figure, which has a vertical symmetry. And actually in the middle of the figure, there's a 10th point. So there's nine points along the outside, and then there's 1 point in the center. And that 1 point in the center is where I think the earth is located. And so the other 4 points, so you've got earth, water, air, fire. Earth, back through the center, earth, water, air, fire. So you've got 4 elements out of phase on both sides. So you have to see if you see it in motion, you can see how when it's going from earth to water on one side, it's going from air to fire on the other. And then they're moving like this, which is basically what happens with the 4 seasons. So you can see how you've got the earth at the center. You can even imagine the tilt of the axis being equivalent to. We should have an illustration of the Enneagram at the very least here, just to.
That's good.
But so the Earth is at that 10th point. The sun and the moon are represented by the air points at the what I call the horns of the figure, which is you've got at the base of the figure, or if you flip it upside down at the top. And it requires a lot of imagination, I'll admit it. But at the same time, it's a tool. It's useful to stimulate the imagination, and somehow I think it, as far as monad, it's like monad is inherent within the structure that I worked out from this Enneagram. I would have never figured this out without figured out monad. And monad was not, I didn't know anything about, well, I knew a little bit about astronomy, but I didn't even know about the ecliptic. It's like I wouldn't have been able to define the ecliptic for you until about 10 years ago, 15. And I've been working on this for 20 years at least. At a certain point, I had to, in one of my books, owner's manual, I described the evolution of monad, and at that point I still had the idea that the moon was orbiting in the orbital plane of the Earth, which it's not. It's like an egregious error on my part. The moon is orbiting in a plane tilted 5.1 degrees relative to the ecliptic. And so I approached this, the building of monad, this astronomical app, as a biologist, not as an astronomer. I saw it in terms of the biorhythms. I was working out the rhythms of the sun and the moon and the earth, and how they had a complementary manifestation on either end. When it's summer on one end, it's winter on the other. Winter turns to fall, or winter turns to spring, summer turns to fall, right? So there's this complementary motion like this, passing through the four elements. Winter is earth, spring is water, fall is fire, and summer is air. So all of this just kind of emerged out of the Enneagram and that original book, In the Garden.
Nice. And the Enneagram is very connected with Gurdjieff, right? Is he the source of it, or the origin of that idea? Or
he's where it's like he apparently heard about it from a Sufi teacher, but until he introduced it, I don't think that it had ever been described before. At least not not in a book. Maybe it was oral knowledge or something passed down through a school or something. But I think that for the first time, the public became aware of it. It's a strange figure, it's got, you see a lot of like six-sided figures, and there's as many points as you can put on a circle. People can come up with the figure. But this one has, like I said, it's got a triangle and the six-sided figure, and their relationship and how they're related is very curious. So I guess one thing I would like to talk about is I guess I see something different with monad than most people do.
Okay.
To me, there's something really profound about monad, and yet I've shown it to a lot of people, and I guess I get a response which seems to indicate that they don't think it's as profoundly important as I do.
Okay.
And I guess can you help? Maybe we could find out why that is. It's like, how do you see it as important? I mean, what's...
Not to put me on the spot or
Not
anything.
to put you on the spot. No, of course, I wouldn't do that.
No, never. I think the most significant thing about it to me is the reframing of time and space, like the relationship to the clock and the calendar. It's a clock and a calendar in using the Earth and the sun as the primary context for time and calendar, which is what how they originate. So the clock originated as, a way to measure the daily solar day.
Yep.
And then the calendar is a way to measure the year, which is a rotation of the Earth around, or orbit of the Earth around the sun. So to me, the main thing that what monad is expressing that in a visual way that is expressed in the form of the Earth and the sun, and those rotations and orbits, and that inherently like kind of reconnects us with the source of time in our calendars. Like regrounds it into the, huh.
See,
So based on that response, is this an example of how most people don't realize the profound, like what else is there? How do you see it?
well, I guess for me the most important thing is this. If you look at this screen here, it says the solar system is a great man, a man is a small solar system. And that message right there is, to me, the most important thing about monad. It's like, how does monad fit in with that statement? How does it, what does it have to do with that statement,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what it has to do is the idea that, I mean, the solar day, the lunar month, the seasonal year, these rhythms that are being measured by that, this celestial sphere, and all of the hour hand. It's like it's got a lot of components which allow it to be measured accurately, these rhythms.
Mm.
But what's significant is that I believe that those rhythms are not just rhythms, they're biorhythms.
Mm.
They're biorhythms of the heart planet of a living solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is an incredible revelation that people should know about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like most people, I think they look at the Earth and they see, or they look at the solar system, and we're just one planet in the solar system. And the solar system, it's like everyone's real excited about the idea, is there life out there somewhere besides here on Earth? And the only life that's on Earth is this very thin layer of biosphere on the surface of the Earth. But monad seems to say something entirely different. It says that the fact that we have plants growing on the Earth, and plants are photosynthetic organisms,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't separate the plant from the soil that it grows in, but you also can't separate the plant from the solar soil, which is the sun. It's extracting light energy from the sun also. So the Earth, the sun, and even the moon, plants unite those bodies, those astronomical bodies, into a living whole. You can't just say that the plants exist independently of those objects. You have to look in holes. And when you look in holes, then you start to see that, okay, this whole thing is alive. It's got biorhythms, and strangely enough, those biorhythms correspond to complementary biorhythms in a human body. And you can, then if you lay it out and you realize, okay, Earth is the heart planet, it can also be thought of as the heart chakra. So the other planets also, maybe they're having an impact, and maybe the whole solar system is alive, and that's a whole different mindset
Mm-hmm.
than just, you're not even worried about, okay, we're telling time here.
Mm.
You're worried about the fact that, wait a minute, we've discovered an entire new species of life.
Mm.
And it's huge. It's on a vast cosmic scale. The solar system is alive. If this solar system is alive, maybe they're all alive.
Mm.
Maybe life is everywhere, right? Maybe the universe is alive.
Mm.
It's like this saying, the solar system is a great man. Man is a small solar system. I stole that from the Sufis also. It's like that's a Sufi saying. And originally it was the universe is a great man, and man is a small universe. Monad provides an intermediate step between you and the universe. It's like not just you, but the solar system and the universe. So it's like there's steps, and they're all living steps. So that's why monad is significant, because what it means, it's like we're in a living universe. When you're part of a living universe, a living solar system, a living planet, then you treat it differently. It's like we're all in this together, interconnection. The ecology is more important than, just mechanism. It's not just a mechanism devoid of life. It's a living, system, and we're part of it. And we're a great part of it. We share the same form as the solar system. Really, once you start to get into it, and then you realize I am that. I can't exist apart from that. It provides my form and structure. I wouldn't exist outside of it. I don't exist outside of it. I am that. There is no, it's like all of a sudden you're the solar system. It's like maybe you're the universe. It's like, I don't know. It's like it brings up this whole idea of intent, and it's like we're potentially magical beings instead of just these walking automatons on this dead planet somewhere. It's a much more magical space inside a monad than it is outside. And you're never really outside,
So it's monad as a term kind of represents the singularity. Like we're part of or it's like the Nassim Haramein idea that we're, as we look out into the universe, like the redshift and all these behaviors are as if we're looking out from inside of a black hole event horizon. And as we look in towards the microscopic scale, like the proton is like looking towards a black hole from the outside or something. So I guess what I mean by that is it's this holistic idea that we're part of a great living being. Like we're not just some random little rock floating through some dead space, but that the whole universe is like a singularity of consciousness. And the solar system it's kind of like one cell is alive, but it's also part of a larger organism. And so the biosphere of the Earth could be looked at as a single cell as part of a larger organism. And then the solar system is a cell, is part of a bigger organism of the universe, maybe. I don't know.
Well, it's like the Earth, the original Gaia theory is this idea that the Earth is a living being somehow. And this was introduced, 50 years ago by, what's his name? Lovelock.
Lovelock.
Yep. And it's a beautiful idea, but it's inadequate. It's incomplete because it wants you to think of the Earth itself as like this, like maybe it's a big bacteria or something floating in space. But it doesn't hint or even try to include the relationship of the Earth to the sun, for instance, right? There is no living Earth without a sun. There is no biosphere without a sun. Just it's inconceivable. And and also the moon. The moon is also the impact of the tides and everything, and the effect that it has on the structure of the Earth, the fact that it's at the precise location to cause eclipses, and just the whole structure of this thing is an integrated living whole. That's the only way to think of it, right? So, it's not that the Earth is alive. The Earth is not an organism. It's an organ system.
Mm.
in a living organism. And
Mm.
that organism is the solar system as a whole.
Mm.
And let's take a look at I'm going to skip the tour and take you.
Oops, here.
Yeah, let me have the
Okay, we're back. So you were going to say, let's take a look.
yeah, it was so just the idea that the solar that the Earth is not an organism but an organ system.
Part of, and the solar system is the organism.
Yeah, the solar system is the organism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an important distinction because the heart itself,
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that the Earth is the heart planet.
Uh-huh.
But the Earth, your heart is not an organism. It's part of an organ system.
Mm-hmm.
An organism is a standalone,
Mm-hmm.
but even it doesn't stand alone. It
Sure.
still lives within an ecology of a larger system.
Sure.
But it's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take a look at how it's possible to see the Earth as an organ system
Mm-hmm.
in the body of the solar system. So this tour is a beautiful thing. Thomas built this thing for me, and I'm forever grateful. But we're going to skip it and go directly to chakra mode. And
Oh, but you did next instead of skip.
I did, didn't I? Yeah.
Go back, just in case,
Go back.
and then skip.
So yeah, so let's skip directly to the app. And there it is. And just real quick, this is the Earth's celestial sphere here. I've cut off the ends, added a calendar band here as an hour hand right there. And let me accelerate forward in time a little bit here so you get a sense of how this looks. So this is the solar day that's being demonstrated here. The solar day is the time it takes for the hour hand to make one complete rotation. Now let me show you a chakra mode. And one thing to look at here is that geo mode, which we're in right here, is focused on the orbital plane of the Earth is vertical. Whereas chakra mode is different. Now this body is a representation of the solar system being. So, and you'll notice that the sun is directly above the Earth, and the Earth's circle of illumination, which is this where it separates the light half from the dark half of Earth, is perpendicular to that vertical axis.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the definition of chakra mode. And here we've labeled the correspondences across scale. So in the above the circle of illumination are the lungs, and below it are the digestive system. And this plane here, which is in the plane, along with the circle of passing through the circle of illumination, is equivalent to the diaphragm in a human body. And the Earth is the heart. And the lungs are above the diaphragm, the digestive system is below it. Now, the heart, the fact is that the heart, you can't separate the heart from the lungs. It's like the heart, the lungs are, in fact, the heart, lungs, and digestive system are an organ system.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're equivalent to, let me just show you this here real quick. Over here you hit trees, and you see this is the photosynthetic organism, right? And this top tree is equivalent to plants undergoing photosynthesis, and the bottom tree is equivalent to plants that are undergoing the dark phase of photosynthesis. There's a light phase and a dark phase. The light phase is where the light from the sun interacts with chlorophyll in plants, and it generates ATP and oxygen as a side product, which gets released into the atmosphere. It's a waste product for plants, but then we need it for animal survival. And then in the dark phase, you have plants will take the ATP molecule created in the light phase, and they'll extract carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and link the carbon atoms together to form sugars and starches to grow the plant. So that's the equivalent of their digestive system. They're just like our digestive system is creating the molecules needed to grow and maintain the body. Same with the dark phase of photosynthesis. That's where they're growing the plant tissue. And just like our lungs, we inhale the oxygen that the plants generated. And that oxygen is essential if you want to perform combustion, cellular combustion. Otherwise, we'd be forced to do, anaerobic, which is much less efficient. We wouldn't be able to have near the complexities of bodies that we have now, right? So this is the correspondences across scale. For this is a photosynthetic organism on a cosmic scale. The sun is the brains. This is the heart chakra, the heart planet, and it forms the organ system within the torso of the body. It has your heart, lungs, and digestive system all fit within the peritoneal cavity of the body as a whole. And these other planets are chakras, which are endocrine organs that are not within that compartment. They're behind it, in the next to it's not in the peritoneal cavity. They're it's like the kidneys and the adrenal gland, and all of those are in a different compartment, basically. So, but I just think that it's a hypothesis, but I think it's a very compelling hypothesis that we have this form, this structure, this modular organization of our bodies with endocrine organs at specific locations along a vertical axis. Why do we have that organization? Is it just random out of nowhere? I mean, it's ridiculous, right? There's got to be some influence or some reason why we have this particular organization. And so if you then say that the solar system is transmitting information of form and functionality of the planets through their magnetospheres, and we exist within that combined magnetospheric field, that morphogenetic field of the solar system as a whole is what informs our organization. And then DNA is then able to play with that information and build different body forms and functionality based upon the overriding field of the solar system. If we were in a different solar system with different planetary structures and physiology of the planets, we'd have a different form and appearance. So this, why is monad important? It's not just to tell the time and date. It's because it opens up a whole new way of looking at life, the universe, and everything, right? It's like let's consider all of these, interrelationships. And then we can start to, understand our real purpose and place in the universe. One last, let me show you the hydro. We have one more thing here, and hydro stands for the hydrologic cycle. And the hydrologic cycle, if you're not familiar with that, it's the Earth is remarkable for a lot of reasons. One is that it has a 3-phase hydrosphere. In other words, there's water in 3 different phases: ice, water, and vapor. And the sun is heating water on the surface of the Earth as the Earth is slowly spinning, and heated water evaporates. So it rises up into the atmosphere surrounding the Earth. And but it's also being carried, that atmosphere is carried with the Earth as it's rotating. So it gets carried to the dark side of the Earth, and it's cooler in the dark side. And water vapor, as it cools, it condenses, and it falls as rain. Now, also, you need plants to create what's called infusoria, which are it's like water molecules. If you had a planet with a hydrosphere, in other words, water, but no plants, you wouldn't have rain. You would have water vapor, but it would never form, conglomerations of, numerous water molecules like a pearl, basically, around a center. It has to have that center. And plants create that center. So the whole thing is part of a hydrologic system, a circulatory system, a planetary circulatory system for a living solar system. This is a living being on a cosmic scale. And this is our planet. It's, I don't know how much more clearer it can get.
Cool.
Yeah.
So something you referenced earlier is you just explained why monad is significant and profound in ways that most people who look at it don't realize. What is your take on why that is? Why, when people look at it, why don't they see this? Why is it not obvious? Or what's the problem there? Why is it that it's all in here, like you just explained and just showed? So why, when most people look at it, do they not get it? What's the problem?
Well, it's complex and it's unfamiliar. And when people encounter something unfamiliar, and it's unfamiliar, but it's also familiar. It's like people have seen diagrams of the Earth and the Sun and the planets. They've seen all that before. It's ubiquitous, right? It's like there's all these models of geocentric and heliocentric models, and
it's like, okay, so you've just kind of readjusted things, or you're claiming something profound and significant. It's like, okay, Earth and Sun and stuff. Okay, yeah, living planets. Okay, great, got it.
And they might even throw it out because it's geocentric. Right? It's like geocentric. Isn't that wrong? Didn't we prove that 500 years ago that that's wrong? This guy's an idiot.
Maybe subconsciously, but you're not saying that, so...
Well, but you asked me why people might have trouble with it, and that could be one of the reasons,
Reasons. Yeah.
So, in order to get this, you have to open your mind and not judge it, and allow it to build up the evidence in shells around, of complexity. It's like each one of these, the hydrologic cycle, the trees, the magnetosphere, all of those together combined to explain the correspondences across scale. But you have to even be willing to accept the fact that, you hear the word chakra. Some people hear that word, a scientist hears that word and they're going to say, this guy is, he's a hippie. He's he's going to try to sell me a candles or something here. It's like, this is not your new age chakras. These are chakras based upon, physiological correspondences, assuming that the planets have morphogenetic magnetospheric fields surrounding them that provide information to the whole. So, and those are big words, it's got scientific stuff.
Yeah, and then you have the guy that really could have been a spokesperson to popularize. Now he's talking about morphic resonance. Sheldrake, which is similar. I mean, it's an overlapping idea, but it's this idea of informational interaction across space.
It's an idea without a mechanism, though.
Sure, but you've got some. But it's related enough that he could be a bridge for people. And his TED Talk was basically removed, because it was too woo woo or too unscientific, or so we have this problem in the kind of public space of discourse where something that's in a related direction as this is basically eliminated as not scientific.
Yep.
So there's this prevailing or dominant paradigm narrative, so to speak, of the quote unquote the scientific, it's either scientific or it's false kind of mind reality box. I mean, to quote Ingo Swann, there's this scientific worldview, everything, only that which is scientific, scientifically provable can be talked about, kind of. It's kind of a filter.
Yep.
The irony there that Ingo Swann proves very succinctly is that, I mean, Ingo Swann is preoccupied with, the powers of consciousness, like, telepathy and psychic stuff, basically. But he shows that, at least in the West, our quote unquote scientific worldview is actually that there are biases that are at play that shape what we even are willing to consider looking at scientifically. And there are things that we exclude because of the bias that if we were to actually look at them with the tools of science, the scientific method, I mean, science is just using the scientific method to explore reality. Psychic abilities, the powers of consciousness are, you can look at them using the scientific method if you're not biased. And what he shows is that in the West, there's bias that's preventing the scientific method from being used to explore things that could be, validated using the scientific method. Whereas he references, like in the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union took power and, under this kind of communistic reframing of everything, they're throwing out all of religious, superstition and only science. Ironically, there were scientists studying psychic abilities using the scientific method. And because when they looked at it and the scientists were unable to say that the methods he was using were not scientific, like his methods were completely valid according to the rules of what the scientific method is. And so therefore his research was able to continue because he literally was using the scientific method to explore something that in the West is just completely ignored because of our bias against it. And so it seems like that might be relevant to this case, where this idea of morphic resonance or morphogenetic field, or, this interaction between the planets and our organs because of this some other process or interconnection that our current scientific theories can't explain, is not being looked at because of bias, rather than being open-minded enough to, hey, I don't know, let's look at it, let's try to figure out, let's use the scientific method to figure out ways of looking at this with an open mind, because who knows? We don't know everything. The fact that we have science at all, science is based on this idea that we don't know everything. And so it's a process of discovery. And it's kind of like guidelines for how do we go about exploring reality in a way that we have some degree of confidence that we're not just making stuff up.
Right.
But it's predicated upon the idea that we don't know everything and that we're in a continuous state of discovery. So it's really problematic when ideas are just cast aside for no evidence against them, right?
It's not scientific at all.
It's not scientific to throw it out with no reason.
Right.
That's what's happening with Sheldrake's stuff, because if you actually look at his stuff, he has a lot of evidence. I think the problem with his approach or with his topic is we don't have measuring devices. It's not something that a measuring technology can be used to measure yet. You know, I mean, he's basing it more on like conversations, like surveys, like people sharing their, oh, I had a lot of dreams about planes hitting towers in the week before 9/11, that kind of stuff, where you're kind of correlating anecdotes and personal stories, which is, there's a lot of that with psychic experiences as well, But like with Ingo Swann talks about in his book, Psychic Literacy. Like you ask scientists, do you believe in psychic abilities? No, the vast majority of them will say no. But if you create a list of experiences that are inherently have some degree of psychicness to it, psychic stuff going on.
Phone psychic stuff.
Like,
oh,
I know
the phone's about to ring.
Right.
You know who's on the line. People who hadn't had that happen.
Or so-and-so called me. I was just thinking about you. I was just going to call you.
Yet they'll discount that.
But no, but when you construct a list of these experiences and say, have you had these experiences? 70 to 80% of scientists have had experiences that can be categorized as psychic experiences. And yet only a fraction of them will label them as a believer in psychic abilities.
Right.
But they're willing to admit that they've had experiences that categorize. It's related to this dominant mindset of, it's kind of an identity thing. I think
it's a paradigm.
It's a paradigm.
People fight any new paradigm.
Well, there's that, but I think there's an identity factor to it. It's like, I'm a scientist. I only believe stuff that's been proven scientifically, right? There's an identity in there. And we know there's like there's tons of academic research to show just how much, once we have an identity construct, or what Ingo Swann calls a reality box, or it's a paradigm. Paradigm is another way of, I think, talking about a reality box, but particularly I think it's the identity factor.
I think you're right, actually.
Like when we attach our identity to some particular belief system, we kind of distort information that isn't necessarily pro or against our identity to either be for or against, either for our identity or against another identity, So it might be like the scientific identity versus the religious identity, or like once identities start to like become us versus them, there's like a subconscious motive to distort the facts to benefit my identity at the expense of the other identity, And so
identity is what's familiar to you, right?
It's what's familiar to you, but it's also like the framework for, it's like the connection between the self and the world. It's like, I am a Christian. It's kind of a connection between my individual with my community, or, my worldview. Like I've connected myself to this group, as well as like a set of beliefs about reality.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like my tribe. It's like my survival group. It's, it's like my team. Because we're very tribal in nature, from millennia of tribal, it's all about survival. To be accepted and a member of our tribe is necessary, or was necessary, for survival. And so, believing what the tribe believes is necessary for survival, because if you don't, you get kicked out of the tribe and then you're dead, historically. But now we're in the situation where we have this very strong motivation to belong to the tribe, or a tribe, or tribes, identity groupings, group identities.
Yeah.
And like the identity is I focus on identity because that's the internal engine. That's the psychological hook, is through the identity.
Yeah, I think people are they're not looking for new information. They're looking for support of their identity, basically.
Belonging, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I agree with you.
Yeah, I'm one of us, and we're and we've got my back, I've got our back, and we're a cluster, we're a group. There's power in that. There's success in that.
I know, like for instance, this whole thing hints of the word astrology.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I'm flat out saying that there's magnetospheres around the planets. Either there were or there are. And if there's not a magnetosphere, there's an underlying deeper quantum field of information somehow that is transmitting form functionality information about the physiology of the planets to our electromagnetic bodies.
Right.
That we use that information to structure our bodies. And so not just to structure them, but to adjust them physiologically to the changing environment that we're living in, including the environment of the whole solar system, right? So that's astrology. Yet astrologers, and as far as so far, I've talked to astrologers, and they don't seem to be interested in this because it's not familiar,
right?
And the it's not part of their identity.
And
yet.
also, there are a lot of sciencey words that you used.
Yeah, it's so maybe too much.
Right. For the astrologers, it's like too sciencey, and then for the sciencey people, it's too
I know it's
astrology-ish.
Like, where are you gonna?
But it's not really enough of either to really satisfy either identity grouping, right? But again, we're dealing with identity boxes.
Here's my. I was going to tell you about my. I'm considering like a marketing campaign. How do I get this across to people, right?
Okay.
So my solution is to not try to sell the content.
Okay.
It's like, nowadays if you look at ads, they have nothing to do. It's like a car. They don't say this car gets this miles per gallon. It lasts this long. It's got these features. It's like, wow, look how cool this guy looks in this fucking car. Right. So
power, how fast it accelerates.
These features, it's like
it's sexy.
What it does to your image.
Yeah.
How it affects your image. Well, I've decided to focus on what's cool about this, and that's this figure here. And also, I've decided to, it's like religion is, it's like I'm not religious, but at the same time I live in a religious world. And you can't, actually I think it's impossible to say you're not religious, because not being religious is a religion in a certain sense, right?
To some, depending on your definition of religion.
I'm just saying that you can't not have an opinion about God, cosmology, how we came here, one way or another. It's like the Big Bang is religion. It's scientific religion,
sure.
Right? So one way or
another,
another,
a lot of bias and dogma in that
totally right
story, and it's a story.
It's a story.
It's Genesis.
It's no different from the Genesis story,
and it's all predicated on the redshift, which
it is actually right. So I think that this statement that the solar system is great, man is a small solar system, and also this statement here. Let me read you this one. Also from Genesis chapter 26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." What does that mean, right? It means what we're looking at here, as far as I'm concerned. This is, I'm not saying that this solar system being is God.
Sure.
I'm not saying he's not also, though. I don't know what he is. I know that he's important, though, and that if he's not God, he's a step in the right direction towards God. Because the universe is a great man is a small universe. Maybe that's the God. But I suspect that also has some form similar to this. Maybe there's a black hole instead of the sun there. That's at the center of the universe, or the one that we're living inside,
sure,
or somehow
it's
we share the same form as the Godhead. And I think that if I can put that, read these sort of quotes, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Left and right, male and female. That also is deeply interwoven into the monad, is this idea of the Ida Pingala, which is the masculine and feminine principle inside of a human body. It's arterial in the venous bloodstream.
I mean, can we see that here if we rotate chakra and then speed it up? Is that what you mean? It's like
Well, yeah, the seasons,
the kind of the shifting back and forth.
yeah, it's like there's Ida Pingala. Pingala is the right side of the body.
Okay.
Ida is the left side of the body. And the action is, it's like summer is active. It's like summer is active on the right side of the body. Winter is active on the left side of the body. Those are, it's like you have both, you go through all four seasons on either side. But Ida is feminine, so it identifies with the winter. And Pingala is the right side of the body. It identifies with the summer. And there's this alternation of the two sides back and forth, but it's like it's also in the magnetospheres and what I refer to as the magnetoform, which we don't show here. Now, if you look at a magnetosphere, it's the Earth-centered magnetosphere, but there's magnetospheres for all the planets except for Mars and Venus, and they are thought to have had magnetospheres at one time. So if you look at the magnetospheres, they're all linked together. They don't stop. They're not like a baseball has a skin. They extend out to infinity. Now, the force of the electromagnetic force associated with that field decreases with distance squared, right? But the information doesn't. The information is present throughout the field. If you have a sensitive enough device, you can read the information at any distance from the field. So, and they're connected somehow. They have a polarity.
And that's the morphogenetic field that you're talking about.
Both the morphogenetic field and the magnetosphere.
Oh, so you're saying you could theoretically measure the magnetosphere of one of the other planets from if the conditions were right.
Right. It's like a radio. I mean, you could, if you have a strong enough receiver, you can detect a radio at any distance.
Right.
It just requires alignment with the field and enough power to reel it in, right?
And enough ability to cancel out noise and interference and all that kind of stuff. Yep. Yeah.
So I'm convinced that these magnetospheres are linked together. The sun comes out like this. It merges with the magnetosphere of every planet at that thing, and it forms the equivalent of a chain. It's like the caduceus that you see on these drawings. You know, you got the central rod with the two snakes. That is the form that the magnetosphere takes going from one planet to the next, all the way out to the end here. And I'm convinced that caduceus, the two snakes, in a human body is the arterial and the venous blood. So you have the blood is in the brain. It's got connections. It passes through and out every endocrine organ. An endocrine organ is an organ which is able to communicate with the pituitary gland in the brain because it releases hormones into the blood. So the blood is what connects up all of the endocrine organs in the body and allows it to form a whole, metabolically, this wholeness. The same thing with the magnetosphere. The magnetoform of the solar system is the equivalent of the pituitary, the endocrine circulatory system. So, yeah, it's information, and that information is used to build the body, but it's also used to maintain the body. The body is reacting it's like we astrology assumes that certain planets in certain locations or uh, conjunctions or whatever with other planets is having an impact. And I suspect that that's the case, and that we are adjusting that certain universal events, wars and stuff like that, are related to forces within the solar system as a whole.
Hmm.
What do you think of that?
Um, I mean, I guess I'm reminded of like in Ingo Swan's book Psychic Literacy. He has a couple of chapters called Scientific Astrology.
I like it.
Uh, Ironic enough, and he attempts to show all of these like give a lot of examples of cases where astrological predictions that were given to individual people came true in different ways, and but I think I think it's common within the astrological space to associate certain astrological alignments as being times when certain types of events might be easier to happen, including wars and that sort of a thing. And, there's certainly a realm in the space of kind of conspiratorial hypotheses that certain agendas, certain groups that might be, planning out certain things do them in correlation with astronomical or astrological alignments that would be useful, would make it easier for certain events to be done. So that's kind of where all those areas are kind of where my mind goes.
I mean, if it's true, it would certainly be a useful thing to know about,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, that's Ingo Swan's perspective. Like, hey, look, there's some really interesting stuff going on here. Like, how about we look at it scientifically?
Why not
There's
consider
nothing
it?
in the scientific method that prevents us from looking at this stuff using the scientific method. Like, let's actually do that. The problem is that there are all these biases that are blocking the scientific method from being used. And that actually gets into like David Hawkins' point, which is something that's being left out is the belief system and bias of the scientists doing the experiment.
Right.
And he's showing like, look, that's a super important factor. If a scientist is doing an experiment to like prove that it's wrong because he has a belief that it's wrong or doesn't exist, like that belief and bias can actually influence the experiment. Why that makes sense? Why is that not a valid thing? Like skepticism, like he asserts that skepticism is an inherently negative mindset that's different than open-mindedness. Open-mindedness and skepticism are two different agendas. Skepticism actually is a negative agenda. It's like thinking that something is false. And that's a negative force. It's like negative belief that can influence an experiment. Whereas being open-minded to the possibility that something might be true you're not believing that it's true. You're not believing it's not true. You're actually just open. You're open to what it actually is.
Doesn't quantum physics say that observation it's not just observation, it's actually creation. You're creating with your observation. You're creating some event. It's like
but that implies that observation is inherently neutral, which maybe is true.
No, does it imply that?
But it's leaving out the belief system of the observer. Just
right.
saying, observation affects the experiment. Okay. But it leaves out, well, is the observer believing in it or is the observer believing against it? Like, to what degree does that add to this? But go on. Sorry.
Well, I'm agreeing with you that we're not we're not accounting for our creativity
Mm-hmm.
and our. It's like when I was saying earlier that this whole idea of monad, that we are this being also.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that one of the beauties of that is that it indicates that there might even be a relationship possible with this being.
Mm.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's like,
Or it already exists, whether we
or
acknowledge
it already
it
exists, whether
or
we
not.
acknowledge it or not. And I like to think that by having the relationship with this being, that it might open me up. This is what I've intuited from reading books and experiences that I've had,
Mm-hmm.
to what I consider a magical reality at a certain level.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I mean, I've had things happen that I can't explain, except magic took place somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like things that are so improbable that they miraculous. That's the only word that
Mm-hmm.
really works in a certain sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that instead of that being something that I try to explain away scientifically,
Mm-hmm.
that I would prefer to learn how to generate that and use that.
Mm-hmm.
Live in a magical world.
Yeah, I remember
You know?
one time at breakfast, I'm probably going to get the exact wording wrong, but it was something to the extent of you saying, like, I am of service to spirit or something of that nature. I mean, you could imagine yourself saying something to that effect.
Yeah, sure.
And to me, that is my definition of true religion. So, like, when we get into this thing of, oh, that there are religions, religion this, religion that, like, there's belief systems, dogmas, those are each different things that we sometimes associate with religion, because religion often becomes dogmatic and it becomes just like belief systems and identities that we construct, and but it actually can get away from what I consider to be true religion, which is this some kind of ineffable, hard to put words to, being of service to spirit, or being,
Yeah.
That to me is what true religion is. And like what you're saying about what if we can be in relationship with this being, the solar system, this living solar system. To me, that is in that realm of what is true religion. What does it mean to be in service to spirit, or, to be like a mirror of light rather than to be identified with the mirror, the matter of the mirror, but if we polish our mirror, we can, or like in Buddhism, there's this idea that we all have this beautiful emerald inside of us, but it's covered up with muck and dirt to varying degrees. And so it's like, yeah, what if polishing or cleaning that gem is part of like opening ourselves up to this, being a member of this larger organism, and this, being one with the universe, so to speak. These kind of cliche ideas, but there's a reality there that the words fall short of adequately describing.
Well, you can try to control your life and control things in your life, or you can accept the fact that you have this life and you want to be of service to life, the universe, the solar system, or whatever, and let that life unfold for you. It's like the magic it's not an active magic. It's, although I think that that's possible also.
Mm-hmm.
But the magic that I'm talking about is the magic that comes from trusting in the universe, trusting in the solar system, as this photosynthetic organism, and treating it with respect, and letting it structure the life around you in a certain sense. It's like, I think that we assume that we have the ability to manipulate our world to a certain extent. But I think that the world is only manipulated to the extent that we are in relationship to that world. And the better your relationship, the more that manipulation just happens magically. I know it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like if you establish the right relationship with this planet, that we could restore this planet to a
Mm-hmm.
paradise
Mm-hmm.
where you can run through nature without having to worry about, you know, diseases and ticks out in the, biting you and giving you Lyme's disease. And
Mm-hmm.
we've created a nature which is we're combative with instead of cooperating with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because we don't acknowledge nature as a living force anymore. It's just, we're out there on dirt bikes, tearing up the land, and we got we're just, we have no respect for this being. If you don't respect it,
Mm.
how can it make your life, why would it make your life easier? Why would it, allow that magic to happen?
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen just because you're not creating it by contributing to it.
Mm-hmm. You're actually taking from it or even destroying it.
You're even destroying it. Yeah,
There's a lot of that going on.
it's terrible, and it could be so much different.
And this is actually reminding me of a book called Nature and Madness. I'm forgetting the author's name, but he was a professor of, I think, environmental studies in a university, and kind of started having this dark night of the soul existential question, like, why, if we're so advanced, humans, us, especially Western civilization, if we're so advanced, why are we destroying our support system? And so he went on a quest, talking to all different experts in all different fields, colleagues, but also traveling to like indigenous societies around the world, trying to understand what is like the core problem that explains why we're destroying our support system. And kind of the thesis, or my understanding of the thesis that he arrived at, was framed in from the perspective of an indigenous perspective, which is like, you guys, meaning you Western civilization people, actually have an immature identity development. Your identities are getting, your identity development is getting stuck. It's actually being hobbled by conditioning, social conditioning, which it stunts. Your identity development is actually getting stunted.
Yep.
And their definition of a fully mature identity is both one as an individual. So everything, like, especially in the West here, we're very much about the individual. But also the other side, it's got two sides. It's the other side is being a member of the community. And it's especially that side in the West that part of our identity is getting stunted. But partly it's because their definition of community extends beyond the human, So even within our Western identity of community, we have little identity with sub-communities, Oh, I'm a member of this church, or I'm a fan of this team, or whatever, or
Tribes.
I'm an American, America first. Tribal identities, which are also purely human in a sense. It's these little human circles of identity. And in this indigenous idea of community is that it extends beyond the human to the whole ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And seeing the animals and plants and sun and earth as being an extension of community. So I'm a member of this community that extends out to the whole ecosystem, or in this case, to the whole solar system, this whole biological organism of which we are a part of inherently. And that's a mature identity, both as an individual with free will and agency and all the things that we value as individuals in our society, creativity, expression, but also this member of this fantastic, amazing community that extends all the way out to the biosphere and planet and solar system and beyond.
That one of my favorite quotes is Albert Schweitzer, and Einstein has a similar quote also, where he says that until man expands the circle of his compassion to include all living animals, plants, that man will never have peace. Something to that extent.
Yeah.
And that to me that's the real key right there. That sums it all up, because you got to start from the bottom up. You can't work your way down. You know, it's like start with humans. You have to start with the plants. It's like day 3, man. Those plants is where it all begins. You know.
Can we read that line again? Because it didn't quite land, and we kind of zipped over it.
The 3rd day of creation.
Yeah.
And God said, "Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 3rd day. The 3rd day, man. Plants. So that's it. If you take care of the plants, first of all, that means you got to take care of the hydrologic cycle, which feeds the plants, right? So the rivers, you got to stop polluting the rivers, clean them up, right? The atmosphere, you got to stop,
pumping
shit up into the atmosphere, toxic. If you do that, everything else is taken care of. Everything else is taken care of. It's like the animals then, are going to be happy. It's going to be paradise. It just flows from that one thing, taking care of the plants.
And also, like, some of the things, it's found, like, in these attempts to regreen desert areas, the more that plants and trees are, I
want to show the trees while we're talking about this.
The more that, you have it?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
The more that plants and trees are restored into a particular biome, more rain comes.
I know, right?
It's a really interesting paradox. And then also, someone was just remarking, I have no idea, I don't know if there are studies that have proven this to be true or anything. This was could be coincidence, but someone was talking about, this is completely third person rumor mill here. We're going to pass on something.
All right.
But something where they were talking about some place where there had been, a drought for X years. And then I think there were a lot of orchards and a lot of fields and stuff that were doing poorly because of the drought. And this person was visiting here and they saw, like, oh, wow, there's like a bunch of area got burned. And they were like, yeah, this fire swept through, but it didn't kill the trees. It just kind of swept through and burned out and then it rained shortly after that too.
Interesting.
Which is, if you think about it too, like, rain droplets generally form around some kind of impurity, similar to
infusoria.
The pearl. There needs to be some sand grain in there that the pearl forms around. And so, what if the smoke and the particles of the plants burning went up in the sky?
Oh, exactly,
and
right?
Seeded the rain.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually.
Yeah, and then also it could be like it acted as some kind of growth signal for the soil or for the trees that then triggered a whatever relationship that the plants have that cause rain to happen. Who knows?
Intention, man. I believe that the intention is balanced by mind. It's like you've got mind is our efforts to work things out. Intention doesn't work things out. It just is. And I think that the solar system is our outside half. We're the inside half. We're the mind. the solar system is the intention behind our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like prayer. You know, what is prayer?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sheldrake, you know, he's got a book on 10 experiments that could change the world, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of them is looking at people from across the room and seeing if you can get them to recognize the weight of your gaze and things like this. And they're all beautiful little experiments.
Mm-hmm.
And intention is that I believe that it's the original impulse of creation is intention, and that it wants to separate out the known from the unknown, the male from the female, all these polarities, so that they can get to know each other and expand into the unknown. You're constantly expanding. That is the intention of life, is to make the unknown known. And, you know, what we were saying earlier about identity, that's what's known. You're known. You have to be open to the unknown to even get out to explore it at all, right?
Yeah.
So somehow we've settled into our identity, and we're just protecting that thing, and it's so fucked up. And
to what degree can you actually have? And maybe that's where, like, the other side of identity, the identity of me as an individual, is also the known elements of me as an individual. But you know, then, like, being a member of a community, if your community extends out into the mystery, then you've got mystery there.
Mystery is a beautiful thing.
And then you're connected to the mystery that way too. And there's maybe more of an open-mindedness to mystery out there, but also on the individual side. Like, we have mysterious aspects of ourselves. Like,
absolutely.
Especially, like, I've been for a long time, you know, doing this practice of, like, making decisions based on intuition, you know, allowing my intuition to kind of guide me in going left versus right, or whatever the case might be. And sometimes it means, like, I'll just be in a social situation and I'll say something just kind of, like, intuitively, not even, and it's this really funny joke, you know, that just was witty and punny and whatever, and I didn't consciously intend to make a joke, but it just, my subconscious just, like, put these things together in a way that it just happened to be funny and witty and stuff. Like, when I try to say something funny,
that's mind.
That's rare.
Right.
So it's fascinating to me that there is this mysterious side of myself, like there is, like, and, like, that's okay. And I love that. You know, I've had so many amazing encounters because I've intentionally allowed myself, I've chosen to allow my intuition to guide me in situations. Not always. Sometimes, you know, I think things out and I figure it out, and it's like, well, this is the right way to go. But sometimes, if I just allow my intuition, it's guided me to so many amazing situations, circumstances, relationships, connections that that are mysterious, you know. So on the individual side of the identity too, you can be connected to the mystery through the individual side of identity as well. And, like, to me, everything is more amazing and fun this way, you know. Yeah.
I mean, this figure here is mysterious. That's what I want people to. Why wouldn't you want to find out what this means? I look at that, and to me, it's just the most open-ended invitation to mystery that I've seen in a long time. Man-made. I mean, it's like, you know, done compare with the sunset maybe, or something like that. But it's like there's a lot of mystery here as to what it means to have a relationship with this being. And it's a plant being. What is a plant being, man? What goes through the mind, the brain, the sun of that being? And, you know, people say, well, the sun's not a brain. How do you know the sun's not a brain?
Mm.
I mean, our brain doesn't look that impressive if you actually look at it. You know, it's just a lump of fat. You know.
Mm.
Yes, it's got if you microscopically look at it, it's got all sorts of complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the sun has all sorts of complexity also,
Mm-hmm.
and it's huge and vast. And we're looking at the sun from 93 million miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what's going on in the mind of that thing?
Mm-hmm.
That's a brain up there, man.
Mm.
And it's a mysterious object.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think I want to approach that thing with the respect due
Mm.
a mysterious being of that magnitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's photosynthetic, so it's different from us. I love the ideas that are in here. It's like, what is going on? All right.